Welcome back to No Apologies on Beck. I am Lori Hins, your host, and with me from sunny Florida, my friend Scott Powell today. Scott is an author, but also a columnist, and a recent column caught my eye. Maybe you'll want to look at that. Scott, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be with you again.
So we have an article that just came out on the 25th, and I saw it, and it was in Townhall, which is a very good reputable place to find articles. And townhall.com had this headline, and I want to compliment you because it's one of those attention grabbers. It says, World War III is here, and it's an ongoing psyop to break America. What a grabber, right? That one was.
But we can all see it. If we just step out of our sort of normalcy bias, Lori, you and I have memories of earlier times. America used to not be the way that it is, divided every which way. And we have the benefit also of knowing the communist strategies because they've written about them. And I have many friends here in Florida. This is a very international place. A lot of people from South America, Vietnamese and so forth. And many of them have just honestly said, what's wrong with you Americans? Don't you see that this is a communist revolution that's happening in America? Why do you think they're taking down all the monuments and statues? They want to destroy your history and your heritage so you don't know who you are anymore. And
in the beginning of this article, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it says the United States is in a world war and it's insidious because there's no shooting right now. What a great opening sentence. That's exactly what's going on. We've seen it in Grand Forks with the Fufeng deal. We've seen it in all sorts of different ways across the United States. Insidious is the perfect word.
Yes, yes, it is. So anyway, I'm an optimist. I think people are waking up, and sometimes you have to sort of bottom out as a culture in order for you to rise up. And I hope that we're really at that turning point now. I mean, when you divide people against themselves, this war to divide us, you could talk about it as the old being divided from the young, class warfare, gender warfare, and ultimately we find that people are being turned against themselves now. It can't go further than that. The whole transgender movement is to turn people against themselves. You're born a man or a woman, boy or a girl, and you can't change that. So we're living, part of all of this is to take our sense of reality away from us, that reality, we can create our own reality. And when you can do that, then you're vulnerable as a society to being manipulated, and that's just where we are now.
Now, you've talked about the division with races and sexes, but I think one of the most difficult ones to watch that we've seen is parents and children. And trying to separate that bond is very obvious, and it's so destructive.
Oh, absolutely. This is so much against God's creation. He created us for a purpose. He created families for a purpose. There's no better, the family is the place where children are raised, and when the family breaks down, society breaks down, and that's what we're seeing today.
So we've seen communism previously. We've also seen World War I, World War II, and then in around 1980, I think it was, China announced that, we're open for business. We're going to be, coming into your country. And the infiltration really, really began so many decades ago with communist China.
That's right. That's right. The Chinese learned from the failure of the Soviet communist system. That system failed because of economic failure. And China had gone through a cultural revolution. It was a third world poor country in the 1980s. They learned from the failure of the Soviet system and said, we've got to get our economy aligned with those economies that are more successful. And of course, the market economies have always been far more successful. Socialism is the road to poverty. Capitalism, free market, is the road to upward mobility and better standard of living. The Chinese recognized they needed to do that, and they decided the quick way was to open their country, invite foreign countries to come in, entice them, if you will, that you can sell your branded products. Oh, and by the way, we offer a great low-cost manufacturing platform, and we fell for it. So we've offshored so much of our manufacturing. We learned this through COVID, that the whole pharmaceutical industry has offshored a good part of their productivity to China. Crazy, isn't it?
It is. The other thing that I have noticed too is that they're talking about chips now. This, this legislation that's going on in Congress, and they're talking about, semiconductors, and then they're talking about the chips, and like I read that 80% of them are from China. So why on earth would we offshore all of that?
It's important. Let's clarify that. China is not a big manufacturer of chips. It is Taiwan.
Taiwan. You're right.
And
I was incorrect.
That's why the issue of Taiwan is so important. Taiwan produces more than 60% of all the microchips that the world uses. And many of these chips are used in military applications as well as consumer products. But in the high end, that is in the smartphones, artificial intelligence, Taiwan has more than a 90% market share. They manufacture more than 90%. Should Taiwan fall to the communist Chinese, the world changes.
I appreciate you with that correction. You are exactly right. That's exactly what I read. But it is, it's amazing to me with the technology that we have in this United States of America that we have not done a better job of protecting our intellectual property and protecting just so many of those various, what would you call them? Not companies, but the industries that we need for this country.
Well, let me tell your audience why we cannot trust the Chinese. They were invited to join the WTO, I think in 2001, I think was the year 2001 or two, when China began to attract foreign business and so forth. They wanted to get full-fledged membership in the WTO. And one of the terms of joining the WTO is to honor intellectual property rights. The Chinese have never lived up to honoring intellectual property rights of other companies. They've always found a way to get around that. They outright steal intellectual property rights. When companies go to manufacture in China, they set up joint ventures. The Chinese get a 51% market share. They get access to all the information, to the patents, to the designs, and so forth. And they have basically ripped off, the Western world of its intellectual property.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on No Apologies. I am Lori Hins, and with me, author of the book Rediscovering America. This is such a great book, too. It says, Rediscovering America, How the National Holidays Tell an Amazing Story About Who We Are. Author and columnist Scott Powell is with us. Before Scott got his PhD in economics, his master's thesis, you may or may not know, was, you probably don't know, was at the University of Chicago, was titled, this is a great title, Deterrence and Political Psychological Warfare. How interesting. So this is perfect for you to speak to the psyops that is going on as World War III in your article of Town Hall.
Well, I've been at this a long time, and what Americans don't understand is that we're fighting an asymmetric war. I mean, it's not only to demoralize us through ideology, spiritual and psychological warfare, it's asymmetric. That is to say, we don't have an even playing field. We don't have propaganda arms inside China. They sure have a lot over here. We don't have any wholly owned facilities in China where we could conduct espionage or spying on the Chinese, but they have them here.
We can't buy farmland there.
Right, you can't buy property there. And when you have a joint venture, it's going to be 51% owned. And the communist Chinese are going to take a great interest in any operations that America has in China.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, what can we do here? So we've taken the big picture and looked at the big picture. What can we do here as Americans to ward this off? I mean, it's a lot of unwinding that we're going to have to do, Scott.
Well, I don't understand all the details of everything that's happened there in Grand Forks, but I want to say this, that you have done a remarkable job in your 15-part series on this communist threat. I was absolutely astounded at how complete your work was. This is a very big, long story. You compressed it down into 15 segments. And my question is to the mayor of Grand Forks and the city council members of Grand Forks is, you've got all the evidence laid out right before you. You have testimonies of Secretary of State Pompeo, of Chris Wray, the head of FBI, and many other experts. What have you missed? You know, this is not as though if the deal doesn't go through, that people lose. Well, yes, a small number of people that have interests would lose, but what about national interests and national security interests? Don't they trump everything? How can a business deal go through that potentially compromises, and when I say potentially, I'm going to say likely compromises our national security, because that's the MO of the Chinese Communist Party. They will use this facility here to conduct espionage, to capture microwave and data from the Air Force, Space Force base there. You can be sure of that. So why would we do that? Have you no honor? Have you no shame to push this through? You know, you work for the people. I'm speaking now to the council members and the mayor. You work for the people of Grand Forks. You work for them, and you need to look out for their security. But this is also a national security issue. So
Absolutely.
National security trumps everything.
Agreed. I absolutely agree with you. It's mystifying to me, and as it is to many people in the Grand Forks area as well. Not all, but there are some who are right there with you, I think, too.
So let me tell you a couple of ideas what people can do.
Okay, 1 minute left.
You can create petitions. You can get people to sign those.
Tried it.
You word them the right way. You can get petitions signed so fast.
We did.
And then you can take legal action. I mean, CFIUS is now involved, but you can take local legal action.
Doing it.
Absolutely. You can use the law of eminent domain. You can prevent this from happening if you have enough determination. You could at least tie it up in courts until we have a more favorable regime in Washington, a more favorable executive.
Right. Well, we're on all of those. We're on all of those fronts in North Dakota. Scott, thank you for your wise words. We very much appreciate you. Thanks so much for coming on.